Good Sunday morning, folks. I'm Mike Naso here with the latest on the tropics. Since we had Hurricane Francine slam into Louisiana as a Category 2 storm, we haven't had a whole lot to talk about in the last week or so. We did have Tropical Storm Gordon, which is completely dissipated here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but we're watching a couple of features. First of all, this area of disturbed weather out in the middle of the Atlantic, not likely to do much. However, this area in the Caribbean Sea, part of the CAG, Central American Gyre, is an area of disturbed weather that we could potentially see a system develop from. And we have a lot of model support the last few days showing that we could get a tropical storm or even a hurricane, maybe even a potent hurricane, taking a track into the Gulf of Mexico this week and heading towards the Gulf Coast or Florida. So we're going to talk about this today. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Now, our three features out there in the next 7 days. This first feature I mentioned is a low chance for development, 20%. It could become a short lived tropical depression. It's kind of spinning out there with low pressure and some sheared thunderstorms, but it would remain out at sea, even well away from Bermuda. We have another feature out here, which is a 40% chance of development. There's nothing there yet, but the models are forecasting that there will be a wave off Africa that could develop and move to the west, west northwest throughout the central Atlantic. Hopefully, it would eventually turn out, but you never know. But the main feature we're watching is this system here on the left side of the screen. This is a disturbance that could gradually develop. It's a 70% chance over the next 7 days. So the formation chances in the next 2 days are near zero, but in the next 7 days are high, 70%. So that tells us we don't have much there yet, but with the model support, there's a high chance we're going to have something spit out of the Northwest Caribbean towards the Yucatan, Western Cuba, and then come up here into the eastern and potentially central Gulf of Mexico. Now, here's the latest infrared satellite, and we don't have anything there yet. We have a system developing here, obviously, south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec, there in the Mexican coastline. This should, again, be an Eastern Pacific issue. But this here is all this disturbed weather, and it's part of that CAG, that CAG, the Central American Gyre. And that's pretty much just these disturbed areas of weather that move across Central America. You've got the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, you get El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and all that tropical disturbance and really nasty, humid weather that can spit out low pressure areas. And we're seeing some sign of this potentially consolidating the next 2 days as it moves towards the Gulf of Mexico. So while there's nothing there yet, the likelihood is high we're going to have something develop. Taking a look right now, we have pretty good upper level divergence, and then we have pretty good low level convergence taking place. And so the conditions are ripe for an area of low pressure to develop and become a threat. Wind shear, not that favorable yet, but as the system does form, it could have a little safe harbor. And of course, water temperatures are very, very warm. The GFS ensembles take a system right into the Big Bend of Florida. Some are further west, some further east, but in general, kind of zeroing in on that area we've seen struck the last few years. Hurricane Idalia in 2023 last year was a major hurricane, a Category 3 near Keaton Beach. And then we had Hurricane Debbie in August strike near Steinhatchee, Florida. So again, we have this area get hit very frequently. Areas there, Taylor County and the more rural locations of the Big Bend. You guys might be under the gun according to the GFS ensembles. And notice here off Africa, we had a very, very quiet August, but they're showing a system forming and becoming a hurricane. And so we'll wait and see with that. We also have the European ensemble showing development, although they're maybe not as strong as the GFS, but they want to take the system more towards the Florida Panhandle, the Big Bend area. And again, the timing on this would be sometime around, say, Friday. So again, we have time to watch it, but if you are doing any traveling or have anybody you know in the area between New Orleans and Key West, this whole eastern Gulf of Mexico, you guys really should stay on top of the tropics the next couple of days. Note the European model also has a system out here, although the European is much weaker with both systems than the GFS. Here's the GFS. Now, this is a simulated satellite through time. Now, this is as of, which one is this? This is 0Z on Sunday. So, the 0Z GFS model, what does it show for the next, say, 2 weeks? You see our system there in the Western Caribbean. Watch what happens. It becomes a hurricane, and it slams into Florida. That is a hurricane slamming into Florida sometime on Friday, like I said, in that Big Bend area. Notice also it shows another system developing out here in the Atlantic and another wave leaving Africa. It has that system move out as a hurricane over open waters and not really bother anybody. But look at here in the Caribbean by about Thursday, October 3rd. This is very long range, so take it with a grain of salt. But I wanted to show you, it shows another system developing here in the Caribbean, and watch what happens with this one. It becomes another hurricane and hits the west coast of Florida. That looks more like it's near Sanibel Island. And then there's another hurricane developing way out in the Atlantic, a stronger one, and that one is moving towards the northwest. So again, more disturbed weather after that. So through October 8th, the next 384 hours, the GFS has 2 hurricanes hitting Florida, 2 hurricanes forming in the Atlantic, and at the end there it leaves a nice blob in the Caribbean we'd have to deal with. So again, that's long range, take it with a grain of salt, but it's an indication that we might have activity, and we thought this was going to be a very, very busy hurricane season, and it really, the brakes just hit on it in August. I'm hoping it's not a backloaded season to where from this point until November we get a ton of storms, but we've already had 3 hurricanes hit the United States. Beryl in July, and then we had Debbie in August, and Francine in September. And that says nothing about the damage Beryl caused in the southern Windward Islands, Jamaica, and the Yucatan as a major Category 4 hurricane through the windwards towards Jamaica. So again, hopefully this doesn't become anything too strong, but again, we don't have a system that is well developed yet, so it's difficult to say where it would go, how strong it will get. The bottom line is if you are along that eastern Gulf Coast, keep an eye on the tropics the next day or two. We'll be able to see if and when this system forms. There's a high likelihood it will, and then head towards the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to watch this very, very carefully. I'm Mike Naso with this Sunday video update on the tropics. Stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next time.